Again, now let's look at adding more detail to the lips here. You can see that we made the meeting line of the lips. Of course, my lips aren't meeting, so they're not that close together, but yours should be. One thing I'll point out is that when I did this illustration, I didn't really match up my lips together too well. You can see that I've got this distinctive shape in the lips here, but I didn't really draw that in the side view. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time matching them up. So you can see in my side view, it's not really matching my mouth shape that much. So I'm winging it a little bit, and you may find that you have to do the same. But so let's say we've established the meeting line here, and we've got the corner of the mouth a little bit. We've got to add some more detail in here to resolve the major plane of the lips here. So let's go in and add an edge loop. Exit, edit mesh, insert edge loop. So let's put it in the middle here. And now we'll just start moving these points in. So you can see I'm going to the top edge here, moving these into place. Now, let me just do the bottom here. Move this up. So I'm just working in one view right now. I'm going to go into the front view and make sure everything is kosher. And match this up. And match these a little bit. So I want to try and get this up and down shape in here. So I may do this a little bit. Try and capture that early. You can resolve it more as we add more detail. Now, I want to look at the corner of the mouth. If you look at the corner of somebody's mouth, usually what happens, the upper part of the lip comes down and turns into sort of a fold over the corner of the mouth. Now, I'm doing a pretty young person, so it's not that obvious. I don't want to exaggerate it too much. But in an older person, this becomes more pronounced, just like the nasolabial fold here will become more pronounced. But we want to make sure we put in the detail early to capture this sort of this line here, this fold of fold of flesh over the corner of the mouth. So I can do that. So here's the corner of the mouth resolved here. Now here's the next line of vertices. I'm going to take this and put it over here. Now it's way out of whack in the side view. And my lip illustrations line up pretty well over here, so that's good. And I can take this next point. Now this is it. I admit it becomes easy to get lost at this point when you get lots of overlying points. So you just have to take care, think about what you're doing. Move this in. Move this point in here. Oh, I forgot to move it in there. This is too far. So I want to pull that out a little bit. So we're starting to get that little fold there. Now there's not enough resolution in this to really achieve it yet, but we're starting to work in the detail there a little bit. You can kind of see what's happening. Here, there's the corner of the mouth in there. And this next row of vertices I'm kind of swooping along to help build out that corner. So you can see that the lower lip is kind of higher up here, so we're doing that. The upper lip goes like this. So you can see how it gets complicated here in the corner of the mouth, but we'll just try and refine it slowly as we move along so we don't run into any big problems. So that's pretty good. You can see that I've got the major plane of the lips there, but we don't have any volume to the lips yet. If we look in the side view, we don't have any of this volume, so we can insert a new edge loop inside the lip. I think that was my last tool, so I can hit Y again and just put it inside the lip here, the transitional zone of the lip. You go to vertex mode and start building out the volume. Now this is, I'm roughing this in this low res mode, and you'll find that if you go into the smooth mode, you really have to exaggerate things to get this kind of bulging. It's looking pretty good. And you pull this down to show that the lips are tending down this way. Oops, it's too. See, here's where my drawings don't match up and I run into a little bit of trouble. So when you're working on your lips, now you're working on a man, so you don't want to hyper feminize the lips, although everybody has the same lips structure. Um, you just want to make sure you're working in this general structure of the up and down of the top of the transitional zone here, and then the downward, then up, and then down, and then this kind of higher position of the lateral part of the lower lip, then down to sort of a lower part in the middle. Oops. So something like that. So you can see in the rough mode, I've got pretty good lips. I feel like everything is kind of flat in here. This maybe has to come out a little bit. If I go into 3 mode, so you can see it, yeah, it's kind of starting to come together. But I still don't really have quite enough definition when it's smoothed out. It's too gradual. So I'm going to add in some more detail. I'm going to add in 2 edge loops. Again, I hit Y because edge loop is the only tool I'm using right now. When you're moving stuff around, that's not a tool, that's just translating things. So there's 1 edge loop. And I'm going to do a nice, really tight one in here because the lip has a lip, sort of this kind of extra little edge. If you look at some photos, most lips you'll see have this extra little edge that we want to define. So adding in that detail, hey, it adds a bit of a tighter edge here, which is what we want. But I'm going to go in and move those points around. So you can see adding that extra resolution allows us to more closely approximate this area here. I'm going to make sure that all this stuff is sort of working. See, this point is too far forward. So as I'm working, I want to make sure that I'm defining this region well between the nose and the lips. I'm looking down here to make sure everything is coming along. Maybe that can come down a little bit. Now the structure under the lips here, or the lower lip, the structure of the lower lip is quite complex, and you'll have to look at some references when you're doing this, but there's this plane here that tends to bulge out a little bit, so I'm going to move that out a tiny bit. And this area kind of tends to become just the transitional zone merges into the non-colored part of the lower lip here. So I'm trying to work in those planes of the face there a little bit. That's pretty good. So that's coming along nicely. Now you can see that I need to maybe exaggerate this a little bit when I'm in the high res mode. So working in high res mode, I can See, when you select a point in high res mode, it actually indicates where the low res point here is. So it's slightly offset, so you just grab that. And I want to exaggerate the structure of the lip a little bit here. And by moving these points up closer to this tight line, I'll get more of a hard edge on the lips. Maybe move this in a little bit. The lower lip kind of tends to roll in under the upper lip. So move that. So pulling these 2 points down over this line, I'll get more of the chin, the fold under the lower lip. So if I look here, I can grab these 2 points and move them in, and I get more of that fold, and then pull these 2 points out to sort of exaggerate it. So you can see what I'm getting there. That looks nice, if I do say so myself. I still think I'm kind of flat in here. I'm going to have to work on that. I feel like the face is going down too quickly, so I'm going to start pulling out these points a little bit. Now I want to avoid making weird bulges, but maybe this one, if we look in here, this one has to come forward a bit to, yeah, getting that shape a little better and avoiding that kind of weird flattening, and maybe these need to come forward a little bit. You just have to keep looking at it and see what looks weird and what looks right. But of course, right doesn't mean attractive, it just means structurally sound. That looks pretty good. I think this lip is maybe too, let me pull that out a little bit. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I did that into the microphone. Select these two. I'm going to pull these back a little bit to help define this kind of shape there. Now the person I'm working on has a fairly procumbent maxilla here. If I just turn on the cranium, so you can see how it comes down like this. It's pretty procumbent, so there's the lips are going to be pushed forward. So I'm trying to work that in, even though it looks a little bit funny here. And you can see I can turn on the mandible every once in a while, or the skeletal data, and you can see that this lip is way too far in here. So before I add too much more detail, I'm going to want to grab this stuff and move it out. I've selected the bottom lip by accident there. So I'm going to move that forward and out. So I can't just move the lips, I'll have to move the other stuff surrounding it, otherwise it'll look funny. So this will probably have to come forward to accommodate that shape a little bit. Kind of funny shaped lips. I think maybe all of this stuff is going to have to, oops, I've selected some stuff in the back. Accident. Bring all this out and forward a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. So I have to make sure that I'm accommodating the skull in here. You don't want the skull to be poking through. But it doesn't have to be perfect yet, because we don't have all the resolution we need in here to match our underlying skull. So I'm not going to get too caught up in it, because I'm going to add more detail as we go along. Maybe move. But this is the stuff you need to add to make sure that you're making an individual face that's related to the skull that we have here. So again, I'm trying to avoid being aesthetically pleasing all the time and making sure that I'm paying attention to what the skull is telling me. So you can see that I'm actually going much more farther out than I initially planned. I think it's too far. So the thickness of the lip here is going to be about the height of the enamel, so it's going to be something like this. But you know, I'm getting structure in there. I thought her face would be sort of recumbent too, and I'm kind of getting that in here in the side view, which is good. I'm getting kind of funny bumps in here, so I'm going to want to make sure I move some of this. Now it just takes a lot of tweaking. Sometimes you can get to the point where you're overworking it, and you have to be careful. And luckily, we're saving in increments, so if something goes horribly wrong, you can go back if you've really overworked the model, which I do frequently. So there, for example, I've really overworked this fold in there. Sometimes it's hard to see if you've got the object selected. It kind of looks fine. So I'm gonna. Sorry, I don't mean to make sound effects in these tutorials. And I know I mumble too. I'm sorry. I'm gonna soften this up a little bit. It's not bad. It's still a little sharp in there. So I'm just going to continue to, maybe I just have to pull all these points up a little bit. I've maybe over-exaggerated it. No, I don't want to get that little dimple in there, so I'm going to pull these out. I'm doing this in the perspective window, but I'm making sure I'm just grabbing these handles, so I'm only moving them in the X or in specific axes, so I'm not just moving them wildly around by grabbing the middle handle here. That's not bad. Anyway, so there's some lip there. I may go in and fix this later, but you just won't have to keep working. I just think that's a little too tight. Sometimes it's hard to see. So now when you go into non-smooth mode, you can see what a kind of almost nightmare it is in there. Oops. So here I'm inside the mouth. It's this crazy mixed up mess. But that's what you have to do to get these things folded over. But I think maybe this one is out too far. Oops. So you will get lost in the mouth here. It always happens, but there it's softened up a little bit. So I'm softening up the corner, but I can always move these in a little more to make a soft fold. And remember, I'm working on a pretty young person, so, or I mean a fairly young person. So I don't want to overemphasize the corner of the mouth there. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do is just to build in the inside of the mouth a little bit. For this, I'm going to turn off those cameras so I don't have to see these planes getting in my way. So show cameras. And let's build out the mouth by extruding the edges inside. It will build the sort of transitional zone to the membranous portion of the mouth. So we have to go into edge mode, and I'll select this one. And then I want to, now let's see if this will work. Go to select, contiguous edges. So that'll select the top lip. And then I'll just by hand go in and select all of these bottom edges. So I've selected the inside edge of the mouth. You can see there, making sure I've got all the edges right to the corner of the mouth and out to the outside of the lip. And then I'm going to extrude. We've extruded faces before, but now we're going to, oops, I'll do it through here. Edit mesh, extrude. And then we can, you see you get funnier results when you do it this way. Go into one mode. So I just hit W to go into move mode. The extrude manipulator handles sometimes give funny results, but you can see I'm building up the shape of the lips. If I turn on the cranium, I can sort of see where I want to go, how far I want to go. Now they're too far out. And maybe just pull these in front, they should be sitting sort of on the teeth here. But again, if I go into shaded mode, now this doesn't matter too much because you're never going to see this part. Oops. But I'm just roughing it in a little bit just so I a kind of structurally sound situation here. Okay, so that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with that mouth. Now I may want to extrude those edges one more time. And then this tutorial will be over. I'm going to hide my tissue depth markers because it's getting in my way. So go to Edge. And select all of these border edges, so the thick ones here. I can hit Y because that was the last tool. Oops, no, it's not the last tool. So I will go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. See if my extrusion, no, it gives me weird results. So I'll just go to Move, and then move them up and back. See if scale does better job. Yeah, I can scale them out to get a better shape. Now you can see it's pierced through there, so I'm just going to go into Vertex and do that. So don't get too caught up in this part. I mean, you're never going to see this, but I just want to build out the roundness of the lips on the inside too. Got a funny little angle in here. Okay, I'll stop tweaking on tutorial time because it makes really long videos. Okay, so we can say for now that mouth is complete-ish, but there's always stuff to tweak. When I look at it here, this looks like it's too far in. One mistake I can see that I made, that when I did all that extruding, it moved this stuff off the midline, so I want to make sure all these points are lined up. And I'll just quickly show you how to do that because it's a good way to fix up all this midline stuff. So all these points that are kind of all out of whack but should be all lined up in the midline, I can select them all the ones that should be on the midline, at least in this region. And then I'm going to grid snap them. So the first thing I want to do is hold down the W key, then hold down the left mouse button, and make sure Keep Spacing is not selected, so there's no check mark beside it. Then hold down X, and that's going to grid snap these points. And then grab this red handle and just move it over slightly, and they'll all snap together in the midline. Okay. So that's coming along. She's looking still like an alien, but we're getting there. So when we come back in the next tutorial, we'll rough in the eye, and then after that we'll build in the nose. Thanks.